All right, so I just want to talk about the generational run that video game studios are on right now. If you couldn't already tell from the thumbnail, I'm mainly going to be talking about like Ad Hoc Studios and Embark Studios, who recently came out with two banger games, and these guys basically had like nothing to their name beforehand. Another mention that I want to throw in there is Sandfall Studios, people who made Obscur 33 earlier this year. I feel like for a while now, the gaming industry has been going into like the dark ages. Game prices being hiked up, so many different like layoffs and delays and stuff like that. And it didn't seem bright, but there was still some hope, right? We had certain like indie companies, like I think about Team Cherry with Hollowknight and like Hollowknight Silksong as of recently, but we didn't know when Silksong was coming out until 2 weeks before it came out. So there wasn't a lot of hope until I feel like this year, the big 2-5, I feel like really gave the gaming industry a new light. Like I mentioned, like Sandfall Studios earlier this year, they released Obscur Expedition 33, and that, come on, bro. If that doesn't win Game of the Year, now, I haven't played it, I feel a little guilty for that. I really do want to play it. It's just sitting there on my backlog with so many other great games. But from everything I've heard, it sounds like it's Game of the Year material. And, this is a debut indie game. This isn't this studio's first rodeo, No, wait, this is the studio's first rodeo. And they crushed the competition. I mean, there's so many different AAA studios out there that, they're not cooked because they have money for days. But, it's really giving them a run for their money. And I mentioned earlier in the very beginning of this video, Embark Studios released their second game a couple weeks ago, Arc Raiders. And that's, people are praising that game, calling it, amazing, one of the best shooters, since whenever, right? And the Embark Studio, this isn't their debut indie game because they're not really an indie studio. They're more of that, AA, that. And Obscur is kind of in that as well because they have a little more money than the indie studios. But, they're not part of that big AAA corporation. And most of these studios, right, like Sandfall, Ad Hoc Studios, and Embark, the main ones I'm talking about in this video, they come from these bigger studios. And they're kind of like the 13 original colonies seceding from Britain. That's kind of how I see it here, and forming their own little Americas. Yeah, I know, I think, and you're watching in the background right now, me play the finals, and I excuse the terrible gameplay. It's not going to get any better either. I'm sorry about that. But, Embark has really just made a name for themselves. And then recently, several weeks ago as well, Ad Hoc Studios released their debut indie game, Dispatch, which is that Telltale style of game, which, the Ad Hoc Studio founders actually come from Telltale. And, that game is amazing. I love that game. And I'm in the processing of platinuming it because I just love it so much. And I feel like it's really showing a light on the gaming industry, especially if we're looking at the Game Awards. And I know a lot of people don't really care for the Game Awards and what happens at the Game Awards. It's entertaining to watch, and we all really tune in for the new game announcements. But there's so many indie games and indie studios that have been represented at this year's Game Awards. And, I would call it foolish if these AAA studios aren't taking notes here. Because, all these games I've listed are below $60. And that's crazy. I know Obscur Expedition 33, I believe it's $50. I could be wrong, but, it's a big game. And then Arc Raiders is $40, I'm pretty sure. And that's endless shooter fun. And Dispatch was $30, and that's like one of the, if not the best story-driven games in a long time. So yeah, no, I just really wanted to talk about that, and I feel like, I think if we were in any dark times, we are coming out of those dark times, and we got a future ahead of us in this gaming industry. We gotta stay strong and really show them, what we're capable of, and support these studios. Of course, we gotta support these studios. Thank you for tuning in.